There is a beautiful yet kind of worrisome thing that every breastfeeding mother has encountered, especially in those early breastfeeding days, and it is called cluster feeding. What is cluster feeding? Is it a big deal? Is it bad? These are the things we're going to talk about in today's episode. Let's go. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey, Mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes, wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. Review time. As always, to start off the episode, I just want to thank you, as I always do, for taking the time to leave me a review, because it helps me, first of all, be encouraged, but also to find other moms just like you who are out there looking for this type of information who just can't find it. The reason when you search for my podcast you find it is because other people have left me reviews. And so when you leave a review, you're helping other mamas just like you, and it doesn't cost you a thing. Today's review comes from somebody whose screen name is Thank You, Lord. And if that ain't a great name, I don't know what is. It's from back in January. The title is From Fear to Faith. This is my second pregnancy. My last pregnancy, we lost our baby in the second trimester. I used to put so much faith and trust into the medical system until they failed me in many ways. This podcast has reminded me that the Creator has a plan for the little one He's creating in my womb. He has made a way. I love the fact that Lori backs up everything she says with scripture. She also gives you the information and facts and allows you to come up with your own conclusions. I found comfort in listening to her podcast and being more informed. Thank you for doing this line of work, Lori. The Lord is using you in so many big ways. Thank you so much to whomever took the time to write that. I'm so sorry for the loss of your baby, but so thankful that my podcast has helped you find truth. It's really hard to find truth out there these days. And so I'm just thankful for you, and I'm thankful for your encouragement. I hope you heard the episode last week. I hope it helped you. I'm sure that you've already walked through that road, but I hope that you will find that what I shared there would be helpful to other moms when they find theirself in your shoes. Okay, so moving on to our topic of the day. Today's topic is cluster feeding. And if you haven't breastfed before, you probably haven't even heard that term. But if you have breastfed before, this term is probably not new for you. There's a whole lot of things that are misunderstood in this world of breastfeeding we find ourselves in. And it's mostly because breastfeeding still hasn't really been normalized enough to where people who haven't had babies before have actually seen it happen enough to be comfortable with it and know what normal looks like. It's easy to think something isn't normal if you aren't familiar with it or familiar with what normal looks like. One of the things that we have often misinterpreted in the medical world, one of the things of breastfeeding that has often been misinterpreted, is cluster feeding. So I want to help you today to understand what that is and how beautiful it actually is. And if some of y'all have had babies before and you're sitting there going, beautiful, what is she talking about? Just go with me. I know it can be a little bit maddening when it's happening, but it's for a purpose, and I think you know that. So first of all, just some basics, just so you can get a general understanding. I first want to just tell you that I remember when my babies were cluster feeding as well. I felt like I was nursing 24/7. It was like, can I even go to the bathroom? It didn't seem like I could. It was hard because you really couldn't do anything but breastfeed. And it was easy to think that something must be wrong to get to this point for them to want to nurse this much. And that was with me knowing that it actually was normal. And yet I still had those thoughts. But just remember, God created this process. He created it beautifully, and it works so well. So I want to help you understand that over the next few minutes. First of all, I just want you to understand that breastfeeding is a supply and demand system. All right, so think back to your school days. And if you took any economics classes when you were studying supply and demand. When demand goes up in a supply and demand system, then the system kicks in and makes more supply to fill that demand. And then when the demand goes back down, the system kind of shuts off to cut back on supply. This is exactly how breastfeeding works. It is a supply and demand system. So the more your baby demands, the greater your supply will be. Okay, now it's not instant, but it is a process. It is a system. Supply and demand in the economy is not instant. It takes a little while for things to kick in after that demand is in place. So you have increased demand, you'll eventually have increased supply. You have decreased demand, you'll eventually have decreased supply. And that really is all you need to know to realize that cluster feeding is a normal part of breastfeeding. See, the baby tells you or tells your body it needs more milk by sucking more. Because see, it's maybe sucked out all the milk that you have, but he or she keeps on nursing and keeps on nursing, and that tells your body, hey, that wasn't enough that time. We need to make more next time. And just by the next feeding, you will already have a little bit of an increase in your supply. So what is cluster feeding itself? Well, it's when the baby is nursing a lot, like constantly, it seems. And it tends to happen in those first few days after birth, and then also later on at various intervals when the baby's going through a growth spurt. Why do babies cluster feed? Well, I'm sure you can guess by now. In the beginning, it's because your milk is colostrum, and colostrum is very small in amount, but it's perfect in nutrition. But when I say it's small in amount, it's like teaspoons full. But I want you to remember, your baby's stomach is actually the size of your baby's fist. So when your sweet little baby gets here, look at its little fist and realize how small that is. That's the size of its stomach. So it doesn't take much to fill that little tummy up. But it also doesn't take long for that baby's body to burn through that small amount of food. It's high in protein, it's high in nutrition and nourishment, so it's perfect, but it is small in amount. So your baby is going to be wanting to feed frequently in those first few days. But guess what? That frequent feeding is setting up a beautiful supply of mature milk. Once your milk transitions and comes in that volume, it's going to set you up for so much success. So you may feel like you're going crazy and all you're doing is nursing in those first days, but I'm telling you, stick with it. Don't take that as a sign something's wrong. Let that baby nurse all the time, and you are going to have plenty of supply just a day or two later, maybe 3 days later. Those efforts are going to pay off. There are so many decisions that you have to make during pregnancy and birth that you shouldn't have to make, but you do. We live in a world that has medicalized a beautiful natural process, and I know it can feel overwhelming to try to sort through it all, but you do not have to walk this road alone. I created my online Christian childbirth education course to give you all the information that you need to make solid decisions you can feel confident about, while helping you to honor the process God created you to walk through without feeling like you're an accident waiting to happen. I leave no stone unturned in this 8-module course with about 20 hours of education. When you join the course, you'll also get access to a monthly meeting with me where I answer your questions live. You won't have to worry about getting answers that are filtered through practice policy or insurance directives. If you don't know me, I'm Lori Morris, and I'm a certified nurse midwife with over 20 years of experience as a nurse and midwife in both the medical and natural birth world. So in this course, you'll get my experience combined with a Christian perspective without an agenda other than to help you have a beautiful birth God's way, like you deserve. You simply can't find another course with this kind of balance out there. To learn more or to sign up, go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com and click on the online Christian Childbirth Education course button. There is no other course out there like this. There are relaxation tracks in it to use before and during labor. There's tons of information about how to stay low risk while navigating the onslaught of standard medical interventions that are going to be offered to you during your pregnancy. There's affirmation cards to help you stay focused both during pregnancy and during birth. There's postpartum information. There's information about how to establish breastfeeding and so much more. Plus, there's the live question and answer sessions every month to cover anything that you might need beyond the course content. You will be prepared for pregnancy, birth, and beyond when you take this course. So come join me. Go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com right now. But that doesn't mean that cluster feeding is over. Just because your milk comes in doesn't mean that's the end of the cluster feeding. You will see it again, most likely. When your baby hits a growth spurt, it'll happen again, because at that point, your baby's body knows it needs a little bit more energy. And so your baby is going to want to nurse more frequently and for longer to send that signal back to your body that, hey, time to make more milk, time to give me more. And so it's just a beautiful, perfect system where your baby can tell your body exactly what it needs. So is cluster feeding a bad sign? No, it isn't. It isn't a bad thing at all. It is a sign that God built a perfect system. And that when you combine that system with supporting breastfeeding in other ways, like staying well nourished and well hydrated and having the right support and not being overly stressed, it will create a system that fits exactly what your baby needs, exactly when your baby needs it. Does cluster feeding mean that your baby's starving or that you need to be supplementing? No, it does not. In fact, supplementing in the absence of actual signs that your baby isn't thriving will actually undermine this system, because when you supplement, you're then using artificial milk or donated milk or whatever it is to fill your baby up. So then your baby is not going to continue sucking to give your body the signs that it needs to know that, oh yeah, we need to keep making more milk. And so it completely undermines that system, because that need, that demand is being met outside of your body. And so your body's not going to get that signal anymore. Should you pump so that you've got more to give when cluster feeding happens? No, you shouldn't. Because see, pumping creates artificial demand. Pumping is mimicking the sucking motion that a baby makes on your breast. And so, yes, when you start to pump, will that increase your supply? Yes, but it can set you up for mastitis or oversupply when you don't need that extra supply and your baby isn't going to remove that extra supply. So either then you're going to have to continue pumping to keep up, or you're going to set yourself for mastitis if you don't, because your baby's signals are not meeting the demand that your body is perceiving through that pump. See, cluster feeding creates extra supply right when you need it that will then adjust back down when the need is passed and your baby is stopped nursing as much. Okay, it's a constant feedback, constant communication, and when you start to pump, you're overriding that and undermining that. If it's a point that your baby is telling your body he or she needs something different, which happens sometimes, that also isn't going to be picked up by a pump. It's also not going to be picked up when you're bottle feeding what you've maybe pumped earlier or formula or whatever it may be. And so you're going to struggle. So let's say your baby is telling you that, he's getting a little bigger. He needs a different type of milk. Maybe needs a little bit more sustained. And you have been giving your baby the pumped milk that's in the freezer or formula or donated milk or whatever the case may be. That extra demand that your baby wants to put into your body, onto your body, so your body knows to continue to make more, your body's no longer picking up. And so you will struggle to ever get caught up to the new demand if you go around these signals to try to give your baby what you think he needs, but he's trying to tell your body what he needs so that he can get it directly from you. So you've got to try to fight that urge to basically circumvent the system. I hope that made sense. But what if you get sore? Some of you are probably who've had babies before are concerned about that. It is possible that you would get sore, But if your baby is latched on well, it really shouldn't hurt. A little soreness, a little irritated maybe, but it should not be acute pain. You might want to have a consult with a lactation consultant if you find yourself getting really sore to where you think you're not going to be able to manage it. You also can try different positions so that the strongest part of the suck is being put on different parts of your breast so that you kind of can spread it around, for lack of a better term. You can do like cross cradle holds, football holds, side lying holds, all kinds of different holds to try to rotate the pressure to help alleviate some of that. Always refer back to that favorite book of mine, Breastfeeding Made Simple, that I'm going to link again down in the show notes. And then also another good book is Anna Mae's Guide to Breastfeeding. Both of those books are going to give you some options for how to deal with the cluster feeding phase. So how do you manage it? How do you deal with cluster feeding? Well, you're just going to have to settle in and let him go or let her go. And I know that can be frustrating. These are the times, by the way, that it's very beneficial to co-sleep. And I went back. I really thought I had done an episode on co-sleeping, but I can't find it. So I'm thinking that maybe I didn't do an episode on co-sleeping, but I do cover it in depth in the course. So this is your invitation to come join us. Sometimes the more controversial topics like co-sleeping, I don't necessarily cover on the podcast as much, but I do cover it when we have a private place that we can talk about it where we're not going to get all the flack from people who don't understand the importance of doing things God's way. So definitely hop over, join us in the course if you haven't already. I cover everything under the sun there, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Just suffice it to say that when you safely co-sleep, that is one of the best ways to manage your period of cluster feeding at night so that you can still get some sleep. And honestly, you've just got to relax and let it be. It is part of God's design. And I know that can be hard when you have lots of other demands on your time, but this might be another reminder that God never really meant for us to be as busy as we are. So this is your chance to have a good excuse to just slow down and enjoy your baby and enjoy these times that are fleeting. I promise you they're going to be gone before you know it. So try to relax, try to enjoy it, and remember that this is a beautiful design of God's. He has made this to work perfectly, and we will work with it. So just focus on that as much as you can, and you'll get through it. It doesn't last forever. So I want to know, did your baby cluster feed if you've already had babies? How did you manage it? Hop over in our Facebook group or in the comments on YouTube, and let's talk more about practical ways that you can deal with a baby who is cluster feeding so that you can keep your sanity and know that you're doing the best thing for your baby. I hope this has helped you a lot, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week.
Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.